Hello, I am Gigi Berardi, and I am the author of FoodWISE, a whole systems guide to sustainable and delicious food choices. And I am going to continue reading a page or so from the very beginning of the book, and also talk a little bit about personal and household resilience. And then I'm also pleased to announce that today the audiobook with beautiful narration by Julie Slater has just been released. It was released about a month early, given the current coronavirus crisis, with the thought that people might enjoy the audiobook rather than a physical copy. So both are available. So I read from FoodWISE. On a personal level, we make choices about what to eat and how much. Dozens of times a day, we are faced with the decision of not only what to eat, which food to buy and how to cook it, what to salvage as leftovers and what to toss, but also how much. Agreeing on healthy food choices, what's good for us and for the planet, where to buy our food, and how much of it we need is particularly tough. Indeed, what constitutes healthy, and I put healthy in quotes, food is mightily contested, and I try to avoid that descriptor as much as possible in this book, especially in my discussion of fats. Clearly, information about food is everywhere, but a lot of what we read and hear is junk information, conclusions without the research to back them up, or prescriptions for food-related behavior that are just not practical in our real everyday lives. As I'm sure you've noticed, results of dietary research change all the time, as does scientific advice, to say nothing of pundits' opinions and food marketing tactics. Had you ever heard of the miracles of acai berry before a few years ago? I hadn't. Around the start of the 20th century, saturated fat was heralded as one of the most important components of good health. Even early United States Department of Agriculture dietary guidelines touted its vast benefits. Now saturated fat is widely condemned, but spoiler alert, it's about to get a serious makeover, as I'll discuss in part 2. With all this conflicting information, maybe it's no surprise that many of us are guided as much by our own feelings and ideas about food as by what anybody tells us. Emotions and information sometimes clash over food. Our mood and what we feel like eating versus what we know about what's in particular foods and what's good for us. How many of us buy that muffin in the coffee shop because it seems just the ticket for what ails us, or have had a bowl of ice cream at bedtime because we feel blue? Mood ups and downs can lead to an awful lot of senseless eating, and it turns out that some foods can reinforce those mood swings. Blissful foods loaded with sugar cause the brain to release neurochemicals like dopamine, chemicals that push our pleasure-seeking and possibly even addiction buttons. Serotonin, the contentment neurotransmitter, can easily be in short supply. More about this in part 2 of the book. At the very least, a bad mood can put a certain spin on our food choices. So that is literally page 2 of the book. And I talk about personal resilience. And this is the resilience we need to be able to adapt to changing food conditions, calories, protein, vitamins and minerals. And earlier in this series and also in my blog, and there's information on my blog in the description of this video, I talked about what makes sense in terms of seasonality right now and trying to cope with possibly limited food supplies in the near future. In the near future, there's not much we can do, but in the future we're talking about a couple of months from now, we can be able to harvest certain foods. And as long as we're preparing our gardens in just the right way now, or our planters if we don't have gardens or any space. So I refer you to the blog where I've got some information on that. The household resilience is in fact a kind of resilience that affects the home where you live and the people with whom you live with. And so it's kind of a household level of understanding of what needs to happen in terms of growing and harvesting and processing foods, as opposed to those daily food choices, 100, 200 food choices a day as to what we're going to eat, how we're going to eat it, and when we're going to eat it. That refers to personal resilience. And anyway, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I am super pleased that the audiobook is out and with such a sweet narration.